I am here with a very special guest, a legendary individual who I would say that I met so very randomly, but nothing happens randomly. I'm here with Jonathan Mckay. I'm pretty fucking excited. Like, I woke up with you on my brain today. So then you messaged me and I was like, this motherfucker really got ESP on me.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I'm excited because when I met you and we was doing a podcast, like, and you started like sharing and revealing like who you are, I was like, okay, like that right there was like an instant thing in my mind where I was like, I know I gotta sit down with you. I know I need to talk to you. I know I need to get your story some way. Then when we switch contacts, and again, I tell you this all the time, this shit is so true. When I'm Googling you, and I'm like, look at all these articles. Look at this. Who the fuck is this motherfucker? Like,
Honestly, it's such a battle trying to do my own press at such a young age, too. And so many people just reaching out at such a high rate, and if you don't get back to them in a allotted amount of time, like, the whole opportunity will be gone.
These are true things. These are true, especially now how a lot of us are self-made, and a lot of us are alone in the aspect of creating whatever it is that we're creating.
Oh yeah.
Like, rarely do we have a group of people around us who not only can flow with us in general, but who can match that energy or complement it in a way that continues to uplift everybody. It's hard to find some people like
I feel like there's almost an aspect of like being comfortable with the unknown that's kind of lacking here, because we're so used to unknown being actually threatening, like life-threatening, because of the instances and the conditions in Flint. So like to have someone who has seen enough that they're comfortable with the unknown without having the traumatized mindset that comes with being in Flint, still being able to see your vision the way you see it and understanding your personal filter is, super valuable.
I don't even know the grandeur-ness of your story. And so we're going to get into, I hope, within our allotted time before we close, a good chunk of it. Let's start at the beginning. You're a Flint native. How was growing up in Flint? Because when I look at you now and just our conversations, you talk about this alternative lifestyle, which is very true to you. How was that, or how did you evolve into that as a kid? Because when we look at Flint, like, that's not something that is present, or rather I should say mainstream.
No, I will say I definitely made my own avenue on societal living in Flint as a whole. Like, I just made a whole new way just by really going out of my way when I was younger. Because I grew up in Rollingwood over on the east side, right by the water tower right there. It was a war zone. It's just the best way to say it. Just being right there between the east and the north. East has its own economy, the north has its own economy, and they're both separated from the city. So just being there while my mom was trying to work for the city, with the city, it was just a lot, because she was always teaching me so much on an educational tip. But I still had to go outside to play. So you just pick up the tips, tricks, and all the nifty parts of living
the
outside.
Survival tactics.
Survival tactics. That's the best word to use, honestly.
Yes, you learn very quickly, like,
you can't just tell everybody everything.
or you can't literally play with everybody.
No, like, there are lines out here. Like, one thing I really prided myself on the alternative living aspect is, like, because I came from a background that included both aspects of being tied into the city, but also being tied into the underground just by geographic area. I felt a disconnect that led me to almost have to, like, I had to beat a lot of ass on my way up to be able to actually be me. Like, everyone wasn't cool with the fact that I was cool with everybody, and I was like, okay, well, if you're not cool with them, but I'm cool with them, and what you did to them has nothing to do with me.
Right,
so you either have a problem with me because you have a problem with them, or if you have a problem with me, I'm just going to take it there. security measures.
That's a very mature mindset to have growing up, or a different perspective to look outside of the traditional way.
I had to, honestly, because like other than that, like I realized probably when I was 13 years old, and I realized that like there's a bigger construct here that you can only build by getting there, because there's so many lines and there's so many finicky moments in conversations with everybody that you either look past it or you let that wall and that barrier stop you. And I live in a world without walls, like on some like third dimensional, fourth dimensional stuff. Like I see through walls. Like I see people who are there working here, and I see people who are working there. And when I look outside, I'm like, okay, I know the people who work at Foster's, and the people who work at 100K in the Ferrisville. I can pretty much see what their movements are in their offices and stuff, and everywhere else. Like it's pretty easy simulation. That's why they're jobs. So like, just being able to have that mindset while I'm going through like whatever I'm doing is not that big, that it's bigger than those walls that still don't even exist for real.
How I classify you is one of these newer beings who, from the get-go, y'all are automatically tuned in and tapped in and just know shit. One, do you feel that same way, that as soon as you
Yeah, I
gain
very
consciousness
rarely
that
do
was
something
yours?
twice. Like, super rarely. Like, if I do a repeated instance, it's always different. Like, we've interviewed, not each other or with each other, but we've interviewed so many times, and it's always a different experience.
Yes, it is.
Like,
Yes, it is.
Totally different energy. So I try to stay present like that.
I think this, and just looking at you, I would say this is definitely way more intimate than all of the other ones, right? Because now it's just me and you. Now I can really look at you and hone in on your energy and be like, okay, I get it. Like I can sort of place these little puzzle pieces that have just been out there, like, oh, that makes sense now. So I'm gonna tie the level of consciousness and spirituality that you hold and possess and are moving into with your experience with the Flint water crisis and getting cancer. Do you feel like these two things sort of create a bigger narrative for you? And if so, in what ways?
No, the Flint water crisis definitely was a direct impact on my consciousness, 100%. It spiraled me into conditions that led me into my awakening period, where I really had a life or death moment where I had to just make a choice. That was like staying in my mom's basement, and like it was leaky, so Flint built, so like kind of faulty every now and then, and, like my clothes would like mildew on them and stuff every now and then whenever the season would break going into spring. I was like, alright, like I have two options here. I can either choose to stay here and I can be a part of the shop, taking these around and just have fun like that, or I could like put my head in a book, get a ride to the library, and I can try to dive into how to get in a better situation. I can read on how other people did it themselves, and I can actually try to apply myself in that way. Like I'd have my friends like drop me off to the library and then pick me up when I was done at the library, and they'd have stacks of money type shit, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Like we can go run it up now. I finished my research, but like I was content with having less because I knew there'd be more later.
So here's where you start to really see me. There's a narrative that you need to tell about. There's a different narrative that you need to tell about that experience and how it links into your life, because it's a very crucial experience, and it is one that sits in your heart space. It doesn't feel like a sort of victimization energy or anything like that. It's almost like what do I do? That's what it's like. What do I do with this experience? Which will lead me to asking about the app you created, but there's something else about that experience that you need to draw forth creatively that will help you understand why you experienced that from a 5D etheric realm.
See, and that's my thing lately. I've been struggling because all this is psychedelic based. If there's a sense of spirituality, my mom raised me in the church. She's a Christian Baptist. I went to a Catholic university and everything. So, like, spirituality's always been there, but it was more on a religious thing. Spirituality and religion are not the same thing.
Totally.
So, going from a sense of being so stuck in the cream material, being so stuck in the rites, the traditions, the religion, and then going on such a abstract is the best way I'd use, where everything's so fluid, everything's so motionless, but so motionful at the same time, and emotional at the same time. It still makes you feel, it still makes you see. You can show someone without ever actually saying any characteristic. When you were going there, like, it was understood. It didn't have to be questioned. It was spirit. You know what I mean? Like, going on that level with spirituality, because it's more abstract, it's multimedia. And honestly, up until we talked on the phone, I was like, I'm not sure if I should push that tip that psychedelics are really what I use to get me here. Because I use a lot of willpower, I use a lot of self-discipline, I use a lot of all these things. I'm trying to not account it to a drug dependence. And make it a tool and show people, like, these are the things you can develop by using this. Not necessarily you need this to do it.
So
because that was what I use, doesn't mean it'll work for everyone else.
Literally. Over time, I think you will come into awareness of how to particularly tell the story, basically. Which is what it is at the end of the day, is how do you want to perceive the narrative that is your life? And how do you want to tell it? Do you want to tell it in a way that puts you in this sort of victim mentality, or do you want to tell the story in a way that continues to keep you in that higher realm of existence, in that higher space?
See, and I wouldn't even consider it like a victim experience, honestly. I'd say it was, like I said, just self-discipline. Like, I definitely hurt myself at that time to make sure I can have it now. But I wouldn't say other people were just, like, conspiring against me. Like, there are, again, rules, rights, and traditions that exist in any construct. So I was so consciously aware of what I wanted that sometimes I'd say, fuck the traditions, fuck the rights, and all that shit. And that's sacrifice right there. You can only do that for so long before the construct smacks you back. I just kind of learned how to interact with people, see where people's intentions are. I can usually tell. There's been those couple times I'm human, I'm 23, so like,
lessons have to be learned. But, like, one of the things that I really like about you, or that really draws my spirit to you, is even in the midst of all of this, you still have this very childlike, very kid presence. How have you cultivated your inner child to such a degree that motherfucker is just out and living his best life?
As much as I hate to say it, because
Well, it is what it is.
no, yeah, it's one of those things. I actually hate to say this. I'm really glad my mom sheltered me so much while I was growing up, because there were a lot of things that I didn't necessarily have to come to terms with as a part of reality and society that made me more out of touch, that actually led to my advantage. Not being so caught up in the job cycle, the cycle of just over broke, the concept of I need this money to pay for this expense, and instead using a whole project or a whole community event or a partnership or some larger scale where there's never the entertainment of a couple hundred or a couple $1,000s. You go straight to the tens of thousands, you go straight to the hundreds of thousands. And with that, I was able to go from, I opened my first LLC when I was 16. So, and I had my first storefront on Beanery Road when I was 19. So I never really had to go through most of what people had to go through as a Genesee County experience.
The regular mundane experiences of life.
I never had to chase. Like, I was always able to think of how to get it, and then I just execute.
That's definitely a different mindset to have. And that's funny how you were able to circumvent all of that shit. Because you're right, because like going through those processes, it does, especially when you in school and just the education system there as we know it, like its little job is to suck the life out of you and turn you into.
I'm still in debt. I'm doing all this. I'm still in debt.
Still in debt. Like, you promised me a future and
my wages are garnished. I'm doing all of this. My wages are garnished.
And I can't afford to live
anywhere. Shout out college. They're like, why'd you become a freaking superstar? well, I don't have a choice. Shout out to other people taking care of me.
Literally.
Education.
So let's talk about. Shout out to education. Let's talk about this app, right?
Yes.
So, give us the name of the app and what does this app do?
So, while we were going through our whole psychedelic experiences, growing up, being my late teens, early 20s experience, I went to a competition up at Factory 2, right up there. And it was the ideation event. It was innovation where they had to, it was a reverse pitch competition. So you had to present solutions to the opioid crisis, I think it was human trafficking, and gun violence. And at the time, Flint was rated, I think, top in the state for human trafficking at that time. So, and the opioid crisis too. So we were like, let's figure out these issues. I was the only person who did the competition well because no one liked my idea enough. And that to me, like, honestly, type shit. Yeah, because I know most of their ideas aren't even going in full operation anymore. And I'm over here going commercial with my shit now.
Right.
So I'm like, really sticking my chest
Jokes
on.
on
And I was a youngin' too back then, man. I was so high, bro. I smoked so much weed. I came in like, they were all like, no. And then I won that round of the competition. So the app is called Keeping Tabs. It is a mobile application that doctors prescribe patients when they prescribe medications if they're starting to develop an addiction or getting better or worse over their treatment terms. I actually had project managers at Mckay Ideas over there come up with my full project set, so that way I had like a little market research portfolio and everything going forward. Actually, ironically, my project manager is now the operations assistant at Mckay Ideas. He got promoted too. So we're all just going, we're just tunneling through the city, just building. Like, while we all go up, there's still like all of our projects that we all help each other run that are also going up. So all of this while we're just going, and there's like this whole infrastructure in Flint, like no one knows about in my age group. Because no one knows what projects we're working on because we're getting cycled through so fast on projects. People can't keep up on how much we're working on. But we're keeping up on all of it. It's the craziest thing to watch, dude. And I can tell that you guys aren't watching because you guys keep hiring us in different organizations instead of the same ones.
Yo, that's like, I didn't know how far your influence was until I saw your name on the Signal Boost thing. And I said, how the fuck did this motherfucker get on it? I said, you know what? How did you come to, I don't want to put this, I don't want to say it's unusual because nowadays I'm meeting a whole bunch of 20-something-year-olds who's doing a lot of shit. And I'm like, how the fuck are y'all doing all this fucking shit? Like, what sort of networks and circles are y'all engaging in that, hell, we're not even that far removed each other age-wise, and yet it's like our worlds, even though they're colliding now.
Right, it's like parallel universes.
Literally,
objects in the meta.
Literally, because I'm looking at people my age, and it was just like now, as we in our 30s, like we're doing stuff that y'all are doing in y'all early 20s, and it's like, what in the shit are y'all tapped into out here to do and to start achieving all of this shit so very young?
I'd say, bro, DMs. No, like genuine.
It starts. It always.
DMs,
He was right.
bro.
It goes out.
Direct messages, bro. There's so many more conversations that you can have just by being vulnerable in a moment. Like, we're super comfortable with anyone walking up to us and just being transparent. If it happens on your cell phone, it's not the same experience, but if you're vulnerable enough that someone can feel your genuineness in it, they're like, bro, you spelled half these words wrong, but you fucking mean it.
Like,
So,
I understand what you're talking about.
damn it, bro, yeah, I got you, I'll help you. Ignorant as fucking shit. And that right there is where you bridge the gap. That's where you start bridging the communication barriers, the socioeconomic barriers. You're like, yo, I can talk to this person even though I'm at a skyrise. I can talk to this person even though I'm in a truck. I can talk to this person even though I'm in the bottoms. I'm in a hotel. I'm on the boat.
So social media has really is social in more ways than I think we'll probably ever really understand and know.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, because I studied the algorithms to the extent that I did, I have a cutting edge, just eye on the media as a whole that other people don't understand who's in other people's audiences.
Are you prepared for the level of success that you are aiming to achieve?
Yeah. I wouldn't say I am.
You sure?
Yeah, no, like, actually, no, I had to think about, like, really what all that entailed for a little bit. Like, I was never really, like, ready for a start. I was just ready for it as it came. And on that tip, I'm like, yeah, like, am I necessarily ready for all of the side missions that come for it all of the time? Like, no, we gotta stop a couple places and get a couple of pieces just so we can go on every one.
Yeah, help a couple people out, you know.
You know, you gotta put a couple people on just to get the pieces off, just so you can do what you need to do.
These are your
Like,
things.
am I prepared? Like, I don't have the resources now, so I guess not really. But am I mentally prepared? Am I, like, sound enough to the point where I'm, like, ready to put in the gumption, the extra little bit that it takes, like 100%, and I'll take it out of wherever I need to. When I'm 23 and I'm moving around like this will be my new life for my whole existence in Flint.
Probably.
This is the smallest it'll ever be.
You can only go up from here. You headed somewhere, and I'm just watching, like,
You know, it's funny when you say that. There's this concept. I'm like super big in quantum physics. Like, that's like one of my.
that makes sense for you.
I'm actually applying these equations to business
Nah,
models.
this makes sense to me. I'm
So,
not surprised.
I'm like studying this concept of escape velocity. And I was like, orbital velocity, I can go wherever at this point in Flint and just be my hippie self wherever and just interact and just be genuine in the moment. Obviously, I gotta be mindful, but like, I'm good pretty much wherever. And I'm like, alright, how can I make it so that I can just go up and wherever without just going wherever and back? Because most of it's like, I can go wherever in the country for bookings, for events, to get my message out, awareness campaigns. Like, I'm starting to get the message out there, like, super fast. But as far as having it be an orbit where it's back home, back home, I want it to be more of an escape velocity, and I just have shit. If the resources are needed here, and I'm the person collecting the resources, I just need a shipping system so that I can get resources from wherever I'm at and just get them here. I just need a secure line of communication, people that I trust, so that when I need bridged here, I can just call in, bridge the gap, it gets implemented back home. Because the rate that I'm progressing in the city, dipping out back. But because it's out and back, it's such a hole in the budget. On top of how it's affecting me physically at this age. Like, I'm just gonna need that. And so I've been studying escape velocity so that way I can have the concept of, instead of having, like, high momentum, you have to have a bunch of objects around you. And just high mass, going at a fast rate. So instead of doing that, I'm trying to have the concept of high density still over a larger mass area. And my object might fall back a little bit. The rest of the objects keep going. That gives me thrust to ride up off of. So at that point, everyone else can stay orbiting. And I'm on that other level where I can actually be able to just mine for resources back in the city.
I would also say using that example as a sort of similar but different. It was almost sounds like you are amassing so much energy that you become the sun and have a gravitational pull of things and people and resources and whatnot around.
I'd like to, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much my goal. My new staff I'm setting up now. I'm having them do full project outlines and business models so that way they can start their own projects as soon as they get paid enough to do it. Like, my business model is not to keep employees. My business model is to make profits.
So, like, what sort of, because you've done so much, what mentorship or words of wisdom can you give people who look at your life in this fucking grandness so they can tap into who they are and begin to push forward and become their own sons and have their own escape philosophy?
This is gonna be the ghettoest shit I've ever said. Bro, I need to get 3 of my teeth pulled. These 2 are fake. I had to go through the actual bottoms of the bottoms to go do this shit. Like, I actually got ran through by the industry. We actually had a conversation about how I was like trying to find the contrast mentally between running through the industry and being ran through the industry.
Remember that conversation?
Like, bro, I was actually that person where they were like, bro, you everybody else can get it. You don't deserve it. For so many reasons. And I still got it. And not only that, I'm making sure other people get it. For sure. And a lot of the people who were given the positions, they don't make sure other people can get it. They're like, I worked this hard for me to get here. And then they start cutting other people's opportunities off.
True.
And
the gatekeeping be real.
You know, and to me, to know that I'm also a form of a gatekeeper. But I'm a gatekeeper that lets people in, lets me know that anyone can do it. Like, I was really out here strung out on Molly. Like, strung out, like, bro, you know what, I could eyeball a quarter of Molly. Like, type shit. That takes a lot. Like, I could eat a half sheet of acid type shit and still be me. Like, you can go from that to being this conscious, to being this articulate, to being this put together, to having your bookings managed by other people, to managing other people's bookings, to having your shit together, to making new ways for other people. Like, anybody can do it, and that's really like the big thing I'm trying to do with drug culture. I feel like people think I'm like anti-drugs, and I'm not anti-drugs. I'm pro-drugs, even. I would argue that I'm pro-drugs. It's mindful, regulated use of drugs. Because realistically, none of this would be in existence without the drug market. We know how much the hemp market impacted the economy, how much the alcohol prohibition era, the crack era, the psychedelic era. Like, I'm not ignoring this. And these are major advancements per decade based off of a market. And there's no other industry. There was no construction market that crashed. There was no housing market that crashed that big. No, it was the drug market crashed that big. So I'm pro-drugs because I understand the importance of them in our society, regulated mindful use. So that way we can actually coexist with the drugs.
Well, you answered 2 of my questions in one, so thank you for that one. I'm done with my questions, but I want to end on this note that I appreciate you, and why I appreciate you so much is what you call alternative, I call queer, and I don't mean in a sexual orientation.
No, it's odd.
Like,
yeah,
and
off the status.
I find that within that comes an incredible amount of authenticity, because to continue to be who you are in spite of and in all of this is daring and is incredibly bold. And so I applaud you, motherfucker. I applaud you.
No, 'cause they really will be my ass just 'cause I'm a little too nice. Yeah, I know. I dare them to, though.